on her finger. The guy said that Lady Atisha Hines would become his wife and take on the surname Wintel. Whoever dares to tarnish her reputation will also tarnish him, the Duke of Cayenne of Wintel. He said loudly that this was his eternal promise in the name of God. Those around were perplexed. Did she really get married? Larianne Hines stood there and mumbled that it was all a lie. Her Tisha could not marry the Duke of Cayenne of Wintel. The girl thought that her sister's condition could not be called normal. She was sick. Atisha didn't know what to do if Larianne told everyone about my hypermania syndrome. If she reveals the truth to the public that the new Duchess of Wintel is terminally ill, Atisha does not know whether the Duke's vassals will insist that he take another girl as his wife. She came closer to her sister and said that once she became the Duchess of Wintel, she was leaving home. Larianne in response came even closer and said, "No, Tisha, you made the wrong choice. You are sick and this is not normal." The girl is sure that something happened to Tisha's head? Larianne asked if she was right. Atisha asked what she was talking about. Larianne replied, "Oh, my poor little sister, you are a stupid but sweet child. She doesn't think she can't just wait and see." She knew that Tisha should have stayed only in her room. "It's so scary." The girl called Atisha crazy. The Duke turned to Larianne Hines and said that the only crazy person here was her. Larianne, furious, asked what he said. The man told her that Miss Atisha had clearly said that she would become the Duchess of Wintel. He added that to tarnish the reputation of Atisha is to tarnish the reputation of the Duke of Cayenne of Wintel. The Duke shouted at her to leave and pointed at the door. She shouted that this couldn't be. The Duke raised his tone and once again said to get out of sight. He added that she would think about her behavior in the mansion until the banquet was over and until he and his future wife, Miss Atisha, returned to the north. The man said that he did not even want to see her and again told her to leave. Larianne came to her senses and started talking to Tisha in a sweet voice and asking them to return to the mansion together. She suddenly said that this time they would play with dolls together. Atisha Hines shrank and turned pale. The Duke took notice of this and said that she did not look well. The girl turned her attention from her sister and after asking again looked at the Duke with frightened eyes. Cayenne said that it was better for her to rest and gave her his hand, waiting for her to choose. The girl put her hand on his, and together they left the main hall, leaving Larianne. All around one could hear ridicule of Larianne and bewilderment at the Duke's decision. Larianne Hines was left standing alone in the middle of the hall. All she could do then was clench her teeth and fists. Atisha sat in a well-lit room and thought about what had happened. Who would have thought that her wedding would be announced in a day? The sister will definitely tell their parents everything, and there are 2 days left before the end of the banquet. The girl was very afraid that her father would take that whip again. Cayenne approached her and asked if she was okay. The girl was even afraid to look at him. She said that she was too angry with her sister and may have gotten him into big trouble. The man replied that when she returned to the ballroom, everyone would forget about what happened, blessing them. He hoped she understood that the girl looked down and asked if he was telling the truth. The Duke added that although he was a little rude, Ms. Hines asked why. He replied that he was in a hurry to announce their wedding. The girl immediately began to deny. She said it wasn't rude. The Duke helped her a lot. Atisha smiled. The man thought about her words about helping her. He didn't do this to help her. And in order to preserve the honor and dignity of Wintels as the head of the family, the girl replied that the reason was not important. He still helped her. She felt that she had received his help. The Duke asked, "Really?" Atisha said this is the first time someone has put Larianne Hines on the spot. She added that this is the feeling in her heart. He will never understand it. The Duke thought for a moment and replied that he could and would understand her. He asked what she was thinking of doing next. The girl replied that she didn't know for sure. Atisha asked if she would go north after the banquet was over. The guy answered negatively. He emphasized that he was asking about her plans for tonight. The Duke asked if she would return to the Hines mansion or go with him. The girl imagined all the horror that awaited her at home and froze. Cayenne of Wintel asked if he understood correctly that she does not want to be with her family. Atisha said he was right. The guy said that since they were leaving for the north, he invited her to his villa in the capital. Since they have already officially announced the wedding, there will be no scandals about the fact that they will be together for 2 days. The girl did not even expect that the Duke could be so attentive. The only thing she can do for him is to die quickly. She thanked him for this, but said that she couldn't do that. Cayenne said that she is his partner. He suggests this to her because he is worried that she might get hurt after being at the Hines mansion. Atisha was shocked. No one ever worried about her. Kayan added that if she had thought about it, he suggested going to his villa. Now Atisha said that she would do so then, and thanked him. The man responded to her gratitude by saying that there was no need for it. She didn't need to thank him. He's not doing this to help her. Miss interrupted him and said that even if he wasn't going to help her, she got help. Therefore she should thank him from the bottom of her heart. The Duke looked at his companion and realized how important this was for her. Meanwhile, at the Heinz estate, the family learned of the marriage of the Duke of Cayenne of Wintel to their daughter. When my father found out, he jumped up from his seat and shouted that this couldn't be happening. What kind of marriage could there be between Atisha and Duke Cayenne of Wintel? The man asked himself what talent his daughter had to become a duchess. Madame Dorothea said that it was rumored that the Duke had a mistress. The father continued to shout about how the prince could decide to marry without the consent of the family. Larianne Heinz ran into the room and screamed, asking her parents if Atisha could get married. The girl, with tears in her eyes, hoped that she would return back to their home. The stepmother replied that if they gave her away, what family would want to take her? She is a complete zero at everything. The father told them to be quiet. He himself became thoughtful and began to stroke his mustache. He thought and firmly said that they should not interfere with their wedding. If she marries the Duke of Wintel, they will have connections. They will be able to expand their business to the very north, and they will even build new tracks there. Larianne was categorically against this, and therefore shouted the word "dad" to the entire palace. He told her to calm down and added that this was a unique opportunity. Larianne continued to shout that Tisha would die soon because she had hypermania syndrome. This is where the girl's mother got involved. She asked how he could send a child with such an illness. What if something happens, for example, at a banquet? What next? The father replied that this meant they needed to send her north as soon as possible. They both looked at him in surprise, and the daughter asked again. The man replied that if they were in time, the incident would happen in the north, and they will just pretend that they knew nothing about her illness. Dorothea replied that it was a great plan. The person who diagnosed Atisha syndrome is their family doctor. If they shut his mouth, then there will be nothing to worry about. The father said they had little time left before Atisha died. They must reach an agreement with the Wintel family. They organize everything. Larianne suddenly screamed that she didn't want it that way. She doesn't want Atisha to become Wintel. The girl wants Tisha to be locked in the mansion. She began to persuade her mother to do this. She in turn asked her husband what he would do with the dowry. If she marries the Duke, they will have to pay a huge amount as dowry. The father smiled and said that he had already decided everything. He calculated everything. The carriage in which the Duke and Duchess were sitting was driving through the city at night. Atisha could not believe that she was in the same carriage with the Duke, whom she met just yesterday. She was so fascinated by what was happening. For the first time in a long time, she was free. She looked at her future husband and admired him. He looked thoughtful, and the thought ran through her mind that he really was handsome. Duke Cayenne is often considered the second most handsome man in the empire, which Atisha thought was wrong. Majesty the Emperor must always come first. For her personally, the Duke is the most handsome. The Duke and His Majesty the Emperor had been close friends since their youth, as His Majesty had grown up in the north, rather than in the capital when he was still a prince. Besides, they fought together. Atisha was thinking about whether beautiful people are always close. She was distracted from her thoughts by the voice of Duke Cayenne. He called her name, addressing her. The girl wondered if she was really staring at him so obviously. The man asked her if she could handle the cold well, because it was very cold in the north. The Duke said that of course she knew that, but this was not a very good place for the sick. The girl replied that she couldn't stand the cold, but she could handle anything, so he shouldn't worry. Especially when traveling north, she would not be a burden to him. Cayenne said that since they were going north, it would be difficult to meet people in the capital again. He asked if she had a close friend whom she would like to contact. The girl replied that she had no friends. If she had spoken to her peers, her sister would have stood between them and interrupted the conversation. Larianne constantly gossiped behind her back. Atisha thought that he asked her something that she had never even thought about. Maybe he really cares about her? He warns her in advance that she will not like it in the north and will want to leave. At the time of the marriage announcement, Atisha did not think of running away, although Cayenne asked if he could ask her one last question. He needs to clear something up. The girl, of course, answered that she could. The man asked if she wanted to sever ties with the Heinz family, or does she want revenge, or maybe an apology from them. The girl thought about it. Suddenly, the carriage ran over a rock at speed and almost overturned. Atisha closed her eyes, but a moment later she was already in the arms of the Duke himself. The man asked if she was okay, but the girl was unable to say a word due to the unexpected turn. Miss immediately began to apologize, but the Duke stopped her and said that it was the driver's fault, so she had nothing to apologize for. He added that when they arrived at the mansion, he would talk to him. Atisha thought that he speaks so coldly, but despite this, his embrace is so warm. She told him it was the road, not the driver, and that he shouldn't order it because of the rock. The Duke turned to her and said that she was too kind, but the culprit must be brought before the law and receive appropriate punishment. For some reason, it seemed to the girl that the guilt and punishment that the Duke was talking about were not directed at the driver. She remembered his words about the Hines family's place. Atisha thought that because she was so close to him, she could feel his breath, and it seemed to her that she understood the Duke's emotions. They're hot, a burning, vengeful spirit hidden beneath a heartless gaze. The girl looked at him and wondered who he could take revenge on. She turned to the Duke and said that she was not sure Atisha has still not been able to do anything. Leaving the Hines family took a lot of courage on her part. She never thought about revenge. Atisha Wintel wondered what she really wanted from this family. She doesn't have time to think about it, but she knows one thing for sure: now everything will be different. The girl told the Duke that she needed to think. First, she wants to sever any ties with them. The man remained silent, and Atisha immediately asked if this answer was not enough. The Duke released her and said that this answer was quite enough. The carriage arrived at the luxurious Villa Cayenne of Wintel late at night. Cayenne offered his hand to his bride, and she carefully climbed down. When she looked up, the girl was shocked. Atisha asked if he really owns this luxurious villa. This mansion was much larger than the Hines estate. The Duke looked towards the house and replied that the Emperor had given it to him. The girl asked if it was His Majesty. The man added that the Emperor gave him a house so that he could visit the capital more often. Atisha fell in love and said that of course such a mansion should not be left empty. The Duke remarked that Miss Atisha seemed to like the villa. The girl replied that of course it was so. Atisha Hines entered the huge house where she was already greeted by servants. Cayenne of Wintel said that if she liked the villa so much, she could have it. No, pick it up. The girl looked at him with a shocked look, not believing what he said. She asked again, "Is the Duke really giving her such a huge mansion that the Emperor gave him?" The man replied that he did not need this mansion, but he could not simply get rid of the gift from His Majesty. He added that wouldn't a gift to his future Duchess be reason enough? Atisha realized that it was a wedding gift. It's probably okay for the Duke to give the mansion as a gift, but it will still go back to the Duke when she dies. The man said that he would give the ownership documents tomorrow. They needed to stay here until they left for the north, but then the house would be all to herself. Atisha agreed to accept the gift. She'll just let the Duke do what he wants. The girl thought that it would be better if she just stayed where she was. She smiled and replied that then she would accept him with gratitude. Atisha Wintel walked and still could not believe that such a large mansion would be hers. She thought that the Duke was really not amazed by such a huge mansion. Cayenne of Wintel has always been expressionless. He cuts off a man's head without blinking an eye. He is known as a fierce monster on the battlefield. The Duke is cold-blooded, but the Cayenne that Atisha Hines watches is not like that. He is inexpressive but not cold as everyone says about him. The girl thought that it seemed to her that the rumors were lying because he simply did not express his thoughts and was prone to rudeness. It seems to her that if you get to know him better, he is very attentive. But it's true. The Duke was kind to her from the very beginning, protected her from her sister. It's probably because she will become his fake Duchess, or because she will die soon. Duke Cayenne of Wintel seems to her to be a very good person. The man said that the servant would show her to her room. The girl agreed. He added that they would see each other tomorrow then, and they both wished each other good night. When the girl found herself in her room, she immediately drew attention to the balcony. She went out and admired it. Everything was so beautiful. Not just a mansion. It seemed to her that even this piece of heaven belonged to her. In the morning, the girl got up when the sun was already high above the horizon. Suddenly, the maid Marin knocked on her room. She said that she had brought water for washing and asked permission to enter. Atisha shouted that she could come in, and a maid rushed into the room with a bowl of water. Marin said that she needed to hurry up and wash her face and then go to the living room. Atisha asked what happened there. The maid replied that the Duke had called the designers the most famous clothing designer in the capital, jewelry designer, and shoe designer. The girl added that they are all waiting for Miss Atisha. Tisha was at a loss. Atisha walked along the corridor, and when she came to the right doors, she looked into them. 3 beautifully dressed people were sitting in the room. Fashion designer, Vivian, the jeweler is Lucy, and the shoemaker is Nigel. The girl thought about the fact that these people gave Larianne many gifts. The maid asked if everything was okay. Larianne has been in the spotlight for her daily antics. She became a muse for designers, so she constantly told Tisha to do her bidding. She ordered her to go to Vivian and pick up her dress, which she ordered, and on the way to stop by Nigel and pick up her shoes. Vivian shouted at her that the dress was still being sewn and that she had made a mistake in the timing. The more Atisha was at her beck and call, the more she was looked down upon and ignored. They treated her like she was her sister's maid. However, her role today is to pretend to be the Duchess of Wintel. She doesn't need to feel depressed in front of them. The girl touched the door handle. When she entered the room, Atisha gave everyone a smile, saying that they had not seen each other for a long time, and asked how they were all doing. All 3 were numb. They probably haven't heard the news about the wedding. Vivian and Lucy started whispering and wondering why they were here early in the morning. Lucy put forward the theory that she could be the very mistress about whom there are rumors. Atisha Wintel calmed down and realized that the news had not yet reached them. The girl turned to them and said that she had been told that all 3 of them were guests of the Duke of Cayenne. She asked them to tell about what tasks the Duke entrusted to them. All 3 fell silent, and the girl once again asked someone to tell her. No one dared to talk to her, so she decided to act. Atisha said it looks like they have nothing to say. If there is nothing to do, then she goes. Vivian shouted at her to wait a minute. She said that they had received a request from the Duke. He said he needed a dress, jewelry, and shoes for the founding banquet. They know that the Duke turned to them for them, but Tisha calmly took a cup of tea in her hand and said quietly that it looked like the Duke had prepared some surprises. All 3 looked at her questioningly and asked what she meant by that. The girl smiled at them and said that this time these things were ordered for her. Vivian couldn't believe it. The Duchess told them that she would need them that evening to attend the second day of the founding banquet. She added that since she would be wearing them, it had to be a masterpiece worthy of the Wintel name. Nigel told her that if she needed it by this evening, they simply wouldn't have time. Atisha asked that don't they all use mana to absorb it into materials? The girl looked at them confidently, saying that she was sure that they could do everything. Vivian started screaming that they couldn't use up all their mana. If they take on her order, they won't be able to take on others for 3 months. They will have to close their salons during this time? Atisha asked again in surprise. She asked her that the Duke's request really didn't mean anything to her. Atisha thought that she shouldn't let them notice that she was nervous. She needs to control herself because her role is to impersonate the Duchess. The more she distracts people's attention, the more pleased the Duke is. She told herself once again that she needed to act confident. The girl thought that maybe she should imitate Larianne. She remembered how Larianne shouted to her, "If I told you to work, then work. If I tell you to work right now, then get started." Atisha shook off these thoughts. Even so, she doesn't want to be like her sister. She said that she understood that the Vivian designer was canceling the order for the dress. She looked at Lucy and Nigel and asked what about them. Lucy looked at her and couldn't believe that she was really the Duke's mistress. What was the Duke thinking when he chose a simpleton like her? Nigel thought the same thing. He had a version that she somehow got the opportunity to temporarily live in this mansion, and now she was just bluffing. The clothing designer could not restrain herself and asked Miss Hines what her relationship was with the Duke. The girl replied that she was being disrespectful. Can they ask personal questions to clients? Vivian was already full of rage and wanted to make a scandal, but then they heard the voice of the Duke, who called Lady Atisha. He stood at the door and warned that he wanted to enter. Atisha shouted to him that he could come in. All 3, realizing what was happening, got up from the sofa and became petrified. When the man entered, the professionals said they were pleased to meet him. Cayenne said he was a little late because he was figuring out how land rights work. As it turned out, the ownership of this villa is included in the price, along with the ownership of the adjacent lands. He came closer to Atisha and asked him to place his hand here. She did, and the Duke said that from now on she is the owner of this villa. Lucy didn't understand what was happening. Isn't this too much even for a mistress? But then suddenly she noticed a ring on Miss Atisha's finger. I realized that this girl was not a mistress, but a future duchess. She stepped forward and leaned over to say that she was flattered that they had given this chance. If they rely on them, they will make a masterpiece like no other in this world, worthy of Wintel's reputation. Nigel said that as expected, even if he had to use all the materials he had saved, he would still make the most beautiful shoes in the entire country. Vivian fell to her knees and began to beg for forgiveness for her rudeness. She promised to make the best dress she could possibly have. Kayan of Wintel replied that it was all for his wife's pleasure. But for some reason, Miss Atisha doesn't look happy now. The Duke turned to his bride, saying that she did not need to listen to them. There are enough designers, they will find others and he will send them back. Atisha said to wait. No matter how they treat her, if it becomes known that these designers have lost the trust of Duke Kayan, they will have to close their salons. The girl added that this was enough for her. She approached the Duke and said that he had spent his time selecting designers. Everything will be fine even if he doesn't send them back. The man asked if everything was fine. The Duchess replied, yes, he arrived at the mansion empty-handed and she also needed something to wear. She has been to their salons a couple of times. They can safely trust them with their order. The Duke replied that as he wished, it doesn't matter if she needs to go to other designers. She can do whatever she wants. Atisha sincerely thanked the Duke for placing such trust in her. Kayan said that he would be gone for a while and would return after lunch. The girl replied that she understood. When the door closed, she turned to the designers. She happily told them, dress jewelry shoes. Where do we start? Meanwhile, the Duke was walking through the garden already in his wife's villa. He thought about her words. Even if you didn't intend to help me, I received help. Therefore, I must thank you from the bottom of my heart. The man realized that she was right. He told her that he wouldn't help, but the truth is that he did. It doesn't even matter whether it's a hasty wedding announcement or an invitation to a mansion, or even calling designers. All this could be considered a normal relationship like the future Duchesses of Wintel. And for everything else, apparently, there is something to be grateful for. He doesn't want her to find out the meaning of this sign until the very end. If she guessed why he was helping her, he pushed those thoughts away. He promised himself that they would never use the nameplate. A carriage was already waiting for him near the mansion. When he entered it, he saw his assistant and a pile of papers nearby. Val de Proms said that he had already studied them as the Duke had ordered. She gave him the papers and said that this was an investigation report on the Hines family and Lady Atisha Hines. The Duke already knew some of the details. Remarried Viscount, portrait of a stepsister, Atisha is weak, lonely, and an ordinary girl. The Duke asked about the 3 designers he had invited and what their relationship was with Lady Atisha. The assistant replied that they were all close with Larian Hines. Every time Miss Larian visited the salons, she used Lady Atisha as a backup porter. To deliberately mock her, she sent her several times to get orders, even when they were not ready yet. There were days when she was completely kicked out of the salons. Kayan of Wintel thought Atisha Hines' white face, pink hair. What deeply surprises the Duke is her composure. Her life was filled with contempt and abusive relationships. However, while asking her about the place, he remembered her words. What do I really want from this family? I don't have time to think about it. The Duke thought that she wanted something, but it would take time. Once she becomes the Duchess of Wintel, she will definitely make those who offended her apologize. He thought that it was also likely that she would want cruel revenge. She may want to strip Hines of his title, or use family members who have become commoners as servants, so that no one else dares to look down on her like before. She will have the power to make them kneel before her. However, he remembered her words about how she didn't even think about the place. How is this possible? Because she is terminally ill? Kayan thought that if he only had a year to live, they would have very different choices. He continued to look at the report about her. If she had known about them in advance, she would have turned to other designers. The man asked to stop the carriage. Val de Proms did not understand why he needed this. He replied that he urgently needed to go to the Imperial Palace. He hadn't seen him for a long time. Lady Atisha sat looking out the window at the sunset in her chic outfit. The maid approached her and asked if they needed to make more tea. Miss replied that it was not worth it. She is afraid that her stomach will not be happy with so much liquid. The girl asked herself where the Duke had gone. If she asks the servants, they will say they don't know. He left the mansion in the morning and still hasn't returned. They were supposed to go to a banquet together in honor of the founding of the state, but they don't even have time to prepare. A thought struck her. Maybe he went to his mistress, If the Duke came to the capital with his mistress, this leads to the conclusion why the servants do not say anything. If this is the Duke's personal life, then it does not concern her. It's just a contract marriage without any feelings, because it was she who made such a promise. The girl did not notice how she fell asleep. She was awakened by the voice of the maid who said that the Duke had returned. She went downstairs and saw him standing and looking at the painting. She told him, "Welcome back." Cayenne apologized and said that he returned later than planned. Unexpectedly, he noticed how gorgeous she looked in her new outfit. She was all glowing. The designers did their best. The thought ran through his mind that she was very beautiful. The Duke asked if she was waiting for him. The girl replied that yes, but not for long. Atisha thanked him for giving her a new dress, jewelry, and shoes. This is the first time she has such beautiful clothes. She was in seventh heaven. Cayenne of Wintel suddenly made a surprised face. The girl did not understand what happened. He thought that she was happy. Doesn't it matter who made them? The man quickly said that it suited her very well and walked away in the other direction from her. Atisha did not understand his behavior. Didn't he like the dress? He stopped in front of the doors and said that in the north he would find her other designers. The lady said fine, but thought it looked like he really didn't like the dress. On the second day of the banquet in honor of the founding of the state, many people came. One of the invitees said that yesterday there was some kind of turmoil, it seems. The woman told him that this happened to Lady Hines. Her daughter told her about this. Another man said that if he had known about this, he would have come yesterday. Aristocrats who missed that performance the day before were asking the same question. Will Miss Atisha become the Duchess of Wintel? Isn't the Duke as impregnable as a flower on the peak of a snowy mountain? The man replied that he had made a good point. You won't even dare to climb there, and even if you do, you won't survive. The woman said that Atisha is spineless, weak, and not even beautiful. She is the most insignificant girl in the whole world, Atisha Hines. Suddenly, Atisha Hines's father burst into the banquet shouting about a wonderful evening. All the guests were shocked by his appearance. Has Viscount Hines arrived to woo his daughter? The guests looked at each other. It was clear from Larienne that she did not know his wedding. And Viscount Hines? The woman decided to come up and congratulate him. She said that apparently there was a holiday planned at his house. The man said with pleasure that this is exactly how it should be. The Duke liked Atisha. One of the barons could not resist asking if he really thought that Miss Atisha would become a duchess. Atisha's father replied that it seemed the Duke fell in love with Atisha at first sight. No matter how big he is still young. The man asked, "Isn't it wonderful when you're in the prime of your life?" The guests couldn't believe it. The rumors were true. This ruthless Duke has fallen in love. The Viscount said that the Duke of Cayenne of Wintel treasures his daughter. They can't live without each other. He looked at this crowd of people and realized that everyone had fallen for it. The Baron asked why Miss Larienne reacted to the news like that yesterday. The father smiled and said that as they all know, his eldest daughter is a little immature. He hid the wedding from her so that she would not be jealous of her younger sister. She didn't know anything. The nobles believed him. The man thought for a moment and said that, however, he was worried about only one thing. The Baron asked what he could worry about when everything was already settled. The father continued to say that, you see, the Duke said that he would not accept a penny from the dowry. The crowd was outraged. What an unheard of thing! Will he really not take anything? The Baroness shared with her friends that the wedding announcement shocked her. She believed that the Duke often stood up for Miss Atisha. Other invitees discussed how the Wintels didn't seem to care about a few pennies in dowry. Their discussion was interrupted by the Viscount, who asked whether this is what love is. The man said that the Duke probably thought that money couldn't buy love. The guests were shocked. Are we really talking about that same Duke? Merciless monster, Grand Duke of the North. Wherever his sword is, there are corpses in that place, this Duke of Wintel. Viscount Hines looked at the faces of these surprised people and was delighted. Everything turns out the way he didn't want it to. The man continued to say that even in this case they would not ruin the honor of the Hines family. How can they not give even the slightest dowry? But the Duke is too stubborn. People began to calm him down and say that if Duke Cayenne says so, what can he do? He doesn't want to offend the Duke by throwing something out. The Viscount was already thanking God. Now the Duke will not be able to do anything contrary to public opinion. He may say that instead of a dowry, he will have to invest the money in the trading business of the North. He called it a brilliant plan. He was brought back from his dreams to reality by the news that Duke Cayenne Wintel and Lady Atisha Hines had arrived. The most insignificant wildflower the aristocracy had ever known had arrived. Now the gem that shines brightest in this room. The man told the others to watch the manna flow through her clothes and jewelry. The woman replied that if he spent so much on Miss Atisha, then it was true that he fell in love with her. Viscount Hines, seeing this couple with outstretched arms, moved towards them. He said how glad he is that Atisha is finally getting married, but on the other hand, he is sad. It's hard to let go of the daughter he raised. He asked her if this was so, and asked her to come up to Daddy and hug him. Her father was always strict towards Atisha, and in general, he was a terrible father and never smiled at her. He showed his tender side only to her sister Larianne. The girl was sure that when he found out about her wedding, he would take her back to the Hines mansion and the ban. Will such a father really celebrate her wedding? She rejected these thoughts. You can't fool her. Her father never loved her. Atisha pushed him away. The girl said he looked too happy for him. The Viscount asked what she was saying. His daughter is getting married. Of course he will be happy. The girl asked, is it not true that he is happy because she is marrying the Duke of Cayenne? The father was at a loss. His daughter was obedient, so why is she acting like this? Atisha continued, if that's not the case, is he happy she's leaving the house? She told her father that he always tried to drive her away and wanted her to die. Viscount Hines laughed and said that he did not remember when he had said such a thing. He asked not to joke. The man asked why she upset her father so much. She better come over and hug him. Atisha is sad. Her father grabbed her shoulder and pulled her towards him. He asked if she was afraid that it would become known that she had hypermania syndrome. If the truth comes out, what will happen to her wedding? Atisha Hines did not expect such a threat from her father. The Viscount continued to say that the Duke would then have big problems. The girl wanted to answer him. He interrupted her. The man said he didn't want this. He wants to maintain a close relationship with the Wintel's family. Therefore, Atisha must stop rioting in vain. Her father ordered her to hurry up and pretend that she had come to hug her father. The girl looked at him and thought, tomorrow is the last day of the banquet. The day after tomorrow, she will leave for the north. She can tolerate him for these 2 days. As always, if she listens to her father one more day, the voice of her future husband brought her out of her thoughts. The Duke ordered the Viscount to stop this. The man turned pale and tried to justify himself by saying that it was not what he thought. Cayenne of Wintel asked what he was doing. In response, he asked him for forgiveness. He was so happy to see his daughter that he completely forgot to greet him. The man turned to the Duke again and asked him to be generous and forgive him for the sake of his daughter, because soon they would become relatives. The Duke thought that in front of him was just a snob who is not against oppression and violence against the weak, but stoops before the strong. He turned to Atisha, but the Viscount interrupted him, saying that he and his daughter urgently needed to talk about the wedding, or rather about the dowry. The man thought that he would make the Duke bend before him. Cayenne of Wintel turned to Atisha and said that she wanted to break up with the Hines family. Has her opinion changed? The girl replied that her opinion would always be that way. My father looked at it from the side and wondered what they were talking about. He decided to distract the Duke. Duke Cayenne here is a video to him that the Hines family does not need to burden themselves with any worries related to their marriage. The Viscount did not believe what he heard. Did the Duke really hear what he said to that aristocrat? No, it's impossible to do it that fast. The man replied that the Duke said that he would not accept a dowry. If so, he suggests setting a wedding date as soon as possible. The Duke asked what was unclear in his words. He said the Hines family doesn't have to worry about anything. Nothing to do with their marriage. The man froze in place. Cayenne of Wintel continued that Lady Atisha will renounce the Hines surname as of today. This means that she will have nothing to do with the Hines family. The Viscount asked him how to understand this. Atisha is his daughter. How can he do it without her family's consent? How dare he even? Everyone was warned that Lassis Ignavan, His Majesty the Emperor, was entering.
Like this video. Hit the like button and subscribe for more videos.